So Newport, you said U.S. versus Jamaica.
Polo match.
Water polo? Yeah.
No, with horses, as in, horses and chuckers and fields and all that. It's at Newport, Rhode Island, and they have matches every weekend. Last year, my book launched at one of their matches, and this year I had my first anniversary for The Truth About Horses at the polo match just yesterday, which was fun. I
That's
couldn't watch
amazing.
much of the game because I was signing a lot of books, but that was also good.
Okay, okay. So it's funny because like my background is Jamaican also too, right?
Okay. Why weren't you there? Rooting on the Jamaicans.
Didn't get an invite.
You're not.
Christy, that's why you're supposed to send me the invite, right?
I don't know. I think they need your support. It was a tight.
Oh,
It was a good game though. It was 9-8, I think, was the final score, but US won. So
yeah? Was
they
that for
needed
like a qualification or something or?
they needed you there. Um, I actually don't know. I think it was, they have their annual matches and they play all the different teams in Newport, and this was just the US Jamaican match in
Is this
Newport.
something you played
Beautiful.
before too?
Sorry?
Have you played this before?
I've never played polo. I would like to. I'd like to learn how. I might be a little old, but but I would actually kind of like to learn.
I love how you say
How
you're a
about we
little
take
old.
lessons together? How about we both take polo lessons?
I'm in Canada, so I don't know how we're gonna make it happen. Maybe we'll figure it out. All right.
So,
So
how's your Sunday?
my Sunday is just starting. It's podcasting, it's content, it's creation, it's having good conversations with Christy Cashman yourself, you know what I mean, and things like that.
Yay.
So, let's get into the conversation.
Alrighty.
Perfect. So let's talk about challenging stories you've brought to life. What has been one of the
Hmm.
most challenging stories you had to bring to life?
I mean, I think the dynamic between the protagonist in my book, Reese, in The Truth About Horses, and her father was a pretty complicated relationship to bring to life because I think that what was kind of difficult as a writer writing these two characters was that they're both very flawed and they were both going down really different paths, and in their grief they both grieved very differently, and the dad kind of just wanted to nothing to do with his past life before the tragedy, and Reese, his 14-year-old daughter, wanted everything that she lost back, and so she was always trying to relive the past. Her father was trying to forget the past and move on, and neither one of those necessarily are, I think, healthy after a tragedy. I mean, you have to learn to let go, but you also have to learn to not just avoid your feelings about the past and about, how tragic a circumstance can be for you and your child. And in Reese's father's case, Reese just didn't feel like she was seen. She didn't feel like her pain was being acknowledged, and so bringing that to into my book, it was challenging, but it was really worth the challenge because it came out well. I did it, convincingly. People like that part of the story.
I love that you say that because it even speaks to real life
Mm,
situations, right? How many
yeah.
times that we have to overcome adversity and things like that, and we learn through the challenges that life brings us, you know what I mean, and things like that. What inspired you to write, though, is the question.
What made me write?
Hmm.
Um, I've always been a writer, but I never had tried to write a novel. And when I sat down to write this story, I actually thought I might be writing a screenplay, or I actually thought I might be writing a sort of a treatment for a screenplay, and I would hire a writer to write the story. But when I started writing, one of those magical things happens when you decide to do something or say yes to something that's sort of there whispering in your ear for a while. And when I said yes, what happened was the voice of the protagonist became really strong and really clear that it was going to be a novel as opposed to a screenplay, because the voice was very much in her head. We were hearing her thoughts. We were hearing her every the nuance of how she thinks. And to me, those are the best books. Those are the best stories, is when I hear how someone thinks and what makes them tick and the inner workings of their thought process. Those are the stories I love. So I think I just wrote a story, you know, that I knew I would love.
Love that you say that. So, creativity. How do you balance that between like the day to day life, right?
Mm.
The business life, what we see in society. How do you balance all that in creativity? Do you draw from inspiration from all those
Mm.
elements, or is it something
Such a
else?
good question. And I actually don't feel like I'm very good at it right now, because I feel like I am being pulled in a lot of different directions. I also feel like, the launch of this book has taken up a lot of my time, which is great. But then really, I have something inside calling me back to writing. I'm working on my next book, Beulah, and that's going to take a lot of time and effort, and it's going to be painstaking. And I'm sure inside I'm like, do I really want to go through that again? Because I don't do my writing in a light-hearted way. I sort of get into the details of the characters and feel those characters and draw from really kind of painful stuff from my past. And so it's not necessarily all fun.
Yo, guys, what's going on? I appreciate you. Thank you. Turn on all bell notifications, subscribe, like, and comment to the podcast. It's the best way to stay up to date. And hey, it helps us gain the clarity and boost ourselves into that algorithm. We appreciate the support each and every day, each and every week. Let's keep on going to keep on growing. Peace.
And and so I'm sure there's a part of me that wants to stay on sort of a shallow level and keep promoting my book and being out there and being like, yippee, hey, look at me, I wrote a book and I hope you love it. Whereas the other part of me that is the writer part is saying, hey, we better get back to work here, because we still have another story to tell. At least one.
For sure.
I
And
hope.
that's what I see in the background there. In the background behind you,
That
you have
Beulah, yeah,
the
that's my
whole
graph for Beulah, which the W graph, which is definitely going to change. It's not, it's definitely not going to stay the same. I was looking at it this morning and I was like, yeah, that's not there anymore. all those all those beats, all those moments.
yeah. And I think like in 7.5 years of doing podcasting, right?
Yeah.
I've met different voices, right? Men, women that have all come on this podcast. And I feel like
Mhm.
with now talking to more people in the creative element, because that's what I look at first is the creative. We all have a creator inside of us. It
Absolutely.
speaks to like that mentality of like, do we ever get writer's block or creative block and things like that?
Mhm.
Explain to the audience, like, how
Mhm.
does that process look for you and how do you overcome it?
I think the best way to look at writer's block, or when you just feel lazy or whatever it is that's going on, life gets in the way. I I feel like the best way to look at that is it's just part of the creative process. And I remember somebody a long time ago told me, write your way through it. Maybe you won't work on your manuscript, maybe you won't work on whatever the book or the story is that you're working on, but just write. Even if you write for 25 minutes and fill a word count or write in your journal. Or I always found that when I would set a timer, when I thought I didn't have the a creative bone in my body and I had no idea where my story was going and I felt like I was in the weeds, I would set the timer for 25 minutes just to write. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe it even took 15, I always found myself able to incorporate something from that. It bubbles up from your subconscious, I think, creativity. And I think the story is trying to be heard, but we pile so much on top, and we sometimes want to think our way through it. And that's where we get in trouble, because really story and creativity is about feeling your way through it. And and you have to trust that, because thinking is, it's almost like this balance. It's like a little bit of course you have to think about it, obviously, but thinking about it is only part of it. Thinking about it is just a small part of creating and being creative.
Oh, well said. Because I feel like, do I ever get podcasting block? That's always a thing. I feel like I come in well prepared. I'm always
Mhm.
prospecting. I'm always, like to say, sports reference. You're scouting the
Sure.
talent that's out there and things like
Yeah.
that. And not really getting a chance to read any of your stories yet, but I do plan on doing that because that's something I
Good.
champion here. When it comes
Excellent.
down to our creative elements, always support the creator first. Writing a book, that's time, that's energy,
Mm.
that's work. There's going to be times that you probably could speak to where you finish maybe that chapter and you're like, wait, what did I just do here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
What does that process look like? Do you ever kind of like go back to the chapter and been like, yo, I need to like reformulate everything back, or do I have to take some things out and then maybe position it into another chapter? How does
Yeah.
that process work?
I mean, again, it's part of the process. When I was writing, and I can only really speak from my perspective, because um I wouldn't necessarily say I could teach it, because I've only written one book, but I can tell you what it felt like for me. There were times when I would have to cut 50 pages, and it was painful because it's time and it's effort that that you put into it. But you start to realize what becomes superfluous to the story once you get closer to the finish. And sometimes it takes a couple of drafts before you realize, well, that subplot really doesn't help the story along. Or the opposite can be true. You say, well, that subplot doesn't really help, but it accentuates the story, it elevates it, it holds it in a different light. And that's why I want to keep it. And so you have this argument, or I had this argument that went on all the time about, you know, which subplots to keep, because they they helped to see the character from a different light, and which ones actually drove the plot along, and which ones um just made the reader or the audience able to see the character differently. And and that's kind of a struggle too, um because what's important to me isn't necessarily going to be important to an editor, and what's important to me might not be important to the publisher. But um and you don't always want to be precious either about what you've written. I think part of being a true artist is being able to be true to what you want to say, but not too precious, because you realize, well, this isn't the last thing I'm going to write. This isn't, there's more to me than this. And I think that keeps us from being too precious.
Well said. Well said. So I got a question. 'Cause I was sitting here. I'm like, this conversation goes so many different ways, but I
Mm.
feel like it's a playoff of like being a creator, yourself being an author, podcasting, any AOR that you're in, photography, all of the changes in technology that are coming. Some would call it changes. Some will call it additions. Some will call it maybe a subtraction, depending on what you've learned to do. How do you now find your writing in this world of like AI and balancing storytelling?
Oh my gosh, I haven't even thought of that, to be honest. I mean, I don't think it's affected me. Um, and it's funny because I was asked to start to format my book into a screenplay at one point, because we were pitching it as a film. And I thought, well, I'll at least go in with a rough draft of my book, in a screenplay format. And I started to kind of mess around with AI to see what it would do, with what's the site, Chat GBT or something like that. And
Yep.
I wasn't impressed. I didn't really get very far, but that's partly because I don't know how to utilize it either. But I don't know. I don't feel threatened by it. I know a lot of creative people do. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should. I'm probably too ignorant to feel threatened by it. I'm probably too inundated with my own, life and world and all that. So it hasn't, I'm hearing all about it. I actually went to a talk about it when I was out in LA, and I guess it just wasn't something that I felt um, was affecting me and what I'm doing in the creative world right now. And I could totally be wrong.
Yeah,
Probably.
I think a lot of creators, they're starting to implement it, but in ways that it's going to help further advance maybe a thought. Maybe it's
Hmm.
going to further advance, post production, maybe something in your element. But I think that it's the ones that use it and try to weaponize it. The thing is, if you really look at AI, like it's all sourced ideas from Google. You get what
Yeah.
I mean? And
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
like finding the best system. Like you actually have to go in there and it's like you got to make it be its own coach. You know what I mean? You can't be like,
Right.
write this essay for me on, random thing. This pen that I bought at the store, because it's
Right.
gonna give you a whole bunch of stuff where I'm like, what? Does this even make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Hmm.
that's exactly right. I feel like that's what I was doing when I was messing around with trying to get it to format it. I was having to feed it so much and then it would go off in a different direction, and I have to remind it to stick back to the story. And I'm sure it could do it, if I was more technical and if I was able to and more savvy about it, but um at the time that I was doing it, it didn't feel helpful.
No, no, for sure, for sure, for sure. So when you go to different events, right?
Mhm.
Say conferences, different events that you speak to, right? Do you ever, because I feel like myself, I'm in this position where it's like we draw from inspiration from something we may have heard on a stage at a conference, or maybe we're in Starbucks sitting there mellowing out, having our cup of coffee, on
Mm.
our, phone or our laptop or our tablet. Do you ever draw from inspiration from those type of
Oh, those
scenarios and
everyday
settings?
moments all the
Mhm.
time. I mean, I on my phone, in my notes in my phone, that's when I use that. And I'm standing in line for coffee or doing, anything, walking my dogs or in the car, you know, I have to pick up my phone because I can't, I don't have a pen and a pad right while I'm driving, but I found, notes upon notes upon notes upon notes. And it's like, for example, standing in line for coffee, seeing somebody just do a gesture that speaks 1,000 words, because I'm always looking for different gestures. Um, we tend to use the same ones over and over again, and they don't feel fresh. And we tend to use the same descriptions for characters over again. But when you see someone who has a different look, or just a certain arch of the eyebrow, or you know a different gait, in their step, a different way they say something to their friend, those are all beautiful things that we can draw on in life, and have to, really, because you sitting behind your desk at your looking at your manuscript, or maybe your blank page all day, isn't going to give you the inspiration that getting out and watch and people watching will. I think it's great exercise for any writer or any creative person to go sit in an airport, or sit in, without your cell phone, without being able to be scrolling the whole time. Really use it as research, because it is one thing that I've found when I am watching people, is people are so much more, just staring down at their phone all the time and not really looking up and engaging, which is a little bit troubling. I don't know what it means, for us as a society or individuals or whatever, but it's, I notice it a lot.
I feel like
It's something to
it's
take note of.
Yeah, it would speak to like social programming. I feel like you go to restaurants and stuff like that, even if you're your friends or a group of friends, things like that, and you see that one point in time, see it all the time happen.
Yeah.
It could be a table of three, table of two, table however many. They're finished eating or there's something going on and everybody's looking at their phone. It's
Everybody.
like it's like I'm like, what are you guys doing a prayer meeting? This silence on the phone, just looking down. And it's not making a mockery of God or
No, I
anything like
get
that,
it.
but it's just
Yeah,
like
I get it.
everybody's just synchronization. Everybody's just looking
Well,
down like this. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
it is. Well, interesting. You should, choose that word, a prayer meeting, because in some ways, we it has become our God. I mean, we just sort of worship our devices. What is it like? I mean, our time on this earth is really, you know, we know what we value by what we spend time doing. And that's kind of a scary thought. We're
It is.
spending a
It is.
lot of time with our phones,
Absolutely.
looking at other people's lives.
Doom scrolling, they call that,
Yeah.
right?
I only know because I do it.
We all do it. I think we all do it. We all go to like, Instagram or X or Facebook or whatever we're using, like
Absolutely.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
could be another one also too, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you got to have that time where you dial it back a little bit, you know?
Yeah. But I think that, when you're trying to be creative, it's just so distracting. It really is just I have such a love-hate relationship with my technology. I just feel like it's so distracting from really the most important part of being creative, I think, is allowing yourself to be uncomfortable. And it's the first thing I think I do is when I'm starting to feel uncomfortable is I start, oh, where's my phone? There must be someone I need to text or call, or we're waiting for their text or call. You know what I mean? So, or email, whatever it is, or look at my social media, see how many likes I got. Yeah, so that I just know that that's getting in my way of writing my next book, which is I got to start putting some parameters around it, boundaries, something.
No, no, absolutely. So fun question to ask here. How how long does it take you to like when you get into your writing, you get into your
Mhm.
flow, right? Give us a day in the life of Christy. What does that look like? Is it morning coffee, morning breakfast, go to the gym, then write? Or is it something that you do? You have some sort of routine?
When I'm in the zone, I find that it's best if I start with my writing and I don't try to do anything else. I might try to read a few of my devotionals or, sort of some uplifting writing guides, writing tips or something like that. Um, but I kind of have to start with a fresh brain if I'm working on fresh material. If I'm editing, I don't need as fresh of a brain. I've found it's a different tool set, different skill set, and I can work more like afternoon or evening or even after dinner before bed if I'm editing or taking notes or something. But fresh material for me requires a fresh brain, and that's usually first thing in the morning. And when I
Love that you
say
said
first thing, I don't mean 4 a.m. I'm like I'm lucky if I'm at my computer, at my laptop at like 8. you know. Used to be
that.
earlier because I had to get up for take my kids to school. So, they'd be off to school. I was up at 6:30, they'd be out the door by 7, 7:30, and I'd be sitting down at my laptop, but now it's a little bit later.
How do you know when a story is ready to be told?
I don't know. I start with themes. I really like strong themes. And then from themes I get into the world. If I think of a theme that I love, maybe, like with The Truth About Horses, it was very much about loss and finding yourself after loss, and that the balance of letting go but also being honoring your past. um that those were important themes for me, forgiveness, and and um, passion. Finding passion in life is a great theme. But I guess I feel like what I'm drawn to are themes, but then it's the world that I place them in that excites me. Like if I think of um, with The Truth About Horses, it was a barn and the horse world and all the people who would come into that world, the sort of the transient characters and the vet and the the blacksmith and the sort of like the charlatan horse guy and the horse buyers and the ranch owners. I mean, I love placing these characters in a world that I can write well. And that's why I chose, for Beulah, I chose the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee because I grew up in North Carolina in the Smoky Mountains in the 90s, 80s and 90s. And so placing my world there is going to be very exciting for me because it's a whole different thing than the barn and the horses and all that. But the South in the 80s, early 90s is going to be fun.
So you seems like from what I'm hearing is you draw from a lot of what you've grown up around and you've put it into storytelling.
Yeah, I
Am I
mean,
correct?
absolutely. I mean, I feel like uh, the Smoky Mountains is a great setting. There's a lot of great description that I grew up with, how the fog hangs over the mountains in the morning and burns off at night. It looks like a veil draped, along the mountains. The way the storms roll in the afternoon and just literally the skies open and then they clear out and the birds start chirping again. And they're just certain things from my childhood that that made me feel something, and I think that's also really important in writing a story is that you remember all those descriptions because those descriptions and those things that we experienced made us feel something. And I can call it the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, but for someone else that could be Oklahoma or, but we all kind of it by describing it well, in my opinion, it makes it feel universal because everyone knows what those, the storm feels like and what a spring rain feels like. And, when you start to see, um, I mean, the first snowfall, and I mean, I'm just using a world I know to describe those things. And then I'm bringing in the emotions of the characters. And so, um, I think what I love about choosing a world that I write well is that it brings me back. It's kind of nostalgic. It brings me back to certain smells and all my senses come alive. And so it's fun for me.
Okay, okay. So maybe this is gonna be a controversial question for the author here is how do you manage audience expectations when writing? Does that ever come into play, or is that something
Yeah.
that you're kind of like, it's whatever. They like it, they
Yeah.
like it. Take the good with the bad.
There's a little bit of that. I think probably for every artist, right? There's a little bit of that when you write something and that you might think of like a few of your friends who would really laugh at that moment or a few of your friends who would really cry at that moment. And then you just think of, a group of people reading it and responding to it in a way that you envision them responding. I just think that's part of the writing. I mean, I could be, it could be because I'm a rookie that I think about those things and I'm like, thinking about the audience. And then there's another part of me that puts things in. It's like, I know I'm going to be criticized for this and I know people are going to have a lot to say about it, but I'm writing it anyway. So you have a rebellious part as an author. I do. I think everybody does. I mean, we all these different parts. And one part is excited about people responding in a positive way. And then another part is kind of excited about having a little bit of a controversial reaction.
Is there anybody you draw inspiration from?
Yeah.
Like author,
Oh,
TV?
any authors I draw? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, John Irving is one of my favorites. I mean, I read A Prayer for Owen Meany and thought that that was pretty special. Um, Frank McCourt. Um, uh, I mean, I love John Updike. I mean, some of the classics. I love, um, Mark Twain. I read Jack London as a kid. I read all the horse books, Margaret O'Henry and all of that. And then um, Steinbeck, Salinger. There's countless authors who have, and then most recently, I'd say that uh, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine is one of the books that I just adored the voice. The voice I thought was absolutely amazing and strong and flawed. Those are my favorite, my favorite
Okay.
voices.
Okay. I got some stuff in post production I gotta go back and read, as far as
Yeah.
some of these authors and things like that. For you though now, your busy life and things like that.
Mm.
When you wrote the first book, what would did you feel was the most difficult chapter to write?
Hmm. Well, I don't know if I would point necessarily to a chapter as much as I would say um, transitioning one part to the next, making it so that the character came to a place where we know that change had to take place and how that transition folds in. Because I'm a little bit old school that way. I want to see the ups and downs. I want to see the character learn something. I want to see them lose everything and then figure out the new tools to gain it back and then hit rock bottom and then find out who they really are. And it doesn't always have to be happy. And the character even can to some degree stay the same, but I want to see change take place. I want to see them experience the world, expect the world to be a certain way. Then the world shows them the world's not one way, and they have to learn how to adapt to that. And and so, you know, in my book it was through tragedy. You can show it so many different ways, and it doesn't always have to be, a horrible tragedy. It can be something like moving from your family home or something like that. But um I guess I feel like transitions for me were something that I had to work on. And uh, the ability to make it feel like, because sometimes when I would read old drafts, I would realize that after, say, part one, it would start to feel like almost a whole new book and a whole new uh, character in a way. And so I had to bring the audience along, and that was in some of my editing and revisions, I really worked on smoothing over those transitions.
Love that you say that. So that book now it's out. Is there an audio version that's going to be
There
coming
is.
out?
It's on Audible. Yep.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. And
It's
you
on
did the
Audible.
audible
I did.
work
I,
for
I read it. Yep.
yeah. How long did that take? Do you feel like that was the easier part than since you already penned
No,
everything?
actually, it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought I'd be good at it because I have done some voiceover work and I have some acting experience. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a no-brainer. It's going to be so easy. But it actually wasn't. Reading my own material was, I'm glad I did it. And I think it turned out great, but it wasn't easy for me. It took me
Did you
longer
ever
than I
like
thought.
So when you were when you were speaking into the microphone, you're reading it. Were you ever like, man, should I have changed that? Does that ever happen?
Oh yeah, and I did because actually I had the draft. I was reading the draft before it went to the printers. And so I was actually able to make some last minute, like it was actually a really good thing for me to do because it was almost like doing my, proofread before sending it off to the publisher.
Okay. So soon to be big screen. Are you trying to bring that to life also
It's
too,
being,
or
yeah, there's kind of a buzz right now about it being a series. And when I say buzz, I mean I mean it's being shopped as a series. So that's exciting. I almost see it more as a series than a movie, which I don't
okay?
know, that's more exciting to me.
Yeah. Okay. No, then it makes more sense because it's like we see how so many things that we may watch, so many shows that we're like, oh wait, that show could have been a movie, or is that
Yeah.
movie could be a show? You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you get the good with the bad. Like I know one
Yeah.
of the shows I'm looking forward to is Penguin on HBO. I think
Oh
next month or
yeah.
so, right? And
Yep.
it's like, imagine if they did that as a movie, but I feel like they'll lose so much of the development of the actual character and then all the other
Yeah.
sub characters that you're bringing in. So sometimes you do need that show to really put everything together because then you never know. It could be a book too, you know?
That's so true. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I've heard of that happening where they make the movie and then the book comes out. Actually, I think Tom Perrotta and Ben Mesrick are really good at those are two great authors too, by the way. But those are good examples of doing things either simultaneously or the other way around. And I think with Tom Perrotta, Election was uh, a treatment and basically, and then made into a movie, and then he finished the book or something like that. The book was so it was the book became the book after the movie or something like that.
Oh, for sure. If you were not an author, what would your job been? I feel like I'm getting, don't say this yet, but I'm getting the vibe I'm getting is very maybe like somewhere in the lawyer, maybe politics, something
The
like that.
justice system, the justice system.
You never know. You never
I
know.
don't know. Yeah. Well, you know what I'm really interested in is like the biohacking, the health stuff, the health and wellness stuff. And I think as a kid I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I really love like home remedies for health, and I'm into, fitness and staying healthy, but I do love things that, you know, prevent us from um keep our immune systems at a in a good place, and because I think that our environmentally and just how we tax our bodies and our systems I think everybody's immune system is shot, and so I feel like there are a lot of things that we can do to improve that, and a lot of it is like what our grandmothers and great grandmothers used to do, like it's all coming back. The Just gargle with salt water, I mean, that's drink that, what's the other one, the one I keep, the oil, the
Essential
awful
oils,
tasting oil that no the awful tasting oil that our grandmothers used to.
cod liver oil.
Cod liver oil, yeah, yeah.
I
I know,
remember that.
right?
Used to drink that when I was very young back in the days. These
Yeah.
kids don't know nothing about that though. They don't know nothing about that.
No.
Yeah.
No, because we're kind of taken over by big pharmaceutical companies that want us to drink NyQuil and that kind of stuff, which I don't think does anything. I think we're better off with a cod liver oil and gargling with salt water and drinking vinegar.
Wait, drinking vinegar. What?
Don't you know that remedy? It's like apple cider vinegar with lemon and cayenne and water. That's
What's
supposed to
that
be
do?
supposed to be a good one. It's supposed to be a cleanser, but it's also supposed to help your gut health and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Have to look
I don't
into
know.
that.
We should
See
start a
what we can
podcast
do.
on it.
Me start a podcast on that?
I
I don't
said
know
we
about that. Well, we're gonna do a virtual podcast. Is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah.
So, what's next? I feel like by the time this comes out, it's going to be
Yeah.
about 4.5, 3 months left of the year. What does success look like for you when it comes to what you've just created with the book, leading into the new book for 2025?
I think that success looks like having a deal for a series for The Truth About Horses and, having that well on its way into development and having a rough draft of my next book, Beulah, done. And my other children's book that I'm still working on. And also just really kind of down family time where, you know, we can do things like have a long dinner and play cards and maybe do a hike and stuff that slows the world down a little bit. I kind of into wanting to slow down time a bit.
It's true because it's wild at the time we're recording this. I felt like the year has already evaporated.
I know. I can't even believe you just reminded me I have 4 months left. Now you've really gotten my anxiety up.
My apologies. I didn't mean to do that live and recording, ladies and gentlemen. But it's like I thought about it. Actually, I was on a call before I came on the podcast. And over here in Canada, they start back school in September, right?
Yeah.
So like the some or first week of September, depending
Mm-hmm.
on how the holiday feel like rolls out and stuff. And then it's like the next week of September. And I'm like, didn't the kids not just get summer holiday?
I know, right?
That
Yeah.
started in July.
Yeah.
Like what's going on in the world right now? Like you look and then it's gonna be winter.
It's it's crazy. Time's a
Yeah,
crazy thing. We got to figure out how to slow it down.
for sure. For sure. Before we get out of here though,
Yep.
plug all the information with your book. Where can everybody check it out? Right?
It's
Where can everybody
everywhere.
get it?
It's everywhere. It's Amazon, of course, and then Books a Million, it's Target. But I also encourage people to go to their local bookstores and ask for it because even if they don't have it on the shelf, they can order it. And I think local bookstores are great to be able to support. So do that. And of course, it's on Audible and check out my site, ChristyCashman.com, and Instagram. I'm Cashman.Christy, author, I think.
What
Um,
you think? You think you're an author?
it might just be Cashman. I've got a few different accounts.
Wow, why you have so many accounts? Is that marketing? Branding, marketing?
No, my main one is Cashman.Christy. And that's Cashman dot Christy, Christy.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And
Thank
guess what? I'm looking forward to the book. I have a lot of commutes between where I'm located and the bigger city of Toronto.
I
So it's
really
like,
can't wait to hear what you think. I'd love for you to, text me or whatever and let me know. Because people
for
like it.
sure.
People like
No, you know what? I think
I'm
it's
warning you.
what are you warning me? What are you warning?
I'm warning you, people like it. You might
Yeah?
think it's about just like a young girl and her horse and, you know, story about loss and all that, but it's about more than that.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll give you the feedback for sure, for sure.
And please
Definitely.
do.
So in audiobook it's running what? How many hours?
In Audible, that's actually a really good question. I should know that. I don't know how many hours it is. I mean, the book's like 350 pages. So,
Okay, that's an easy read.
yeah,
That's an
I
easy
should
read.
know, but it goes fast. It's
Yeah.
it's I really got my transitions down.
I love that. I love that. And here's something I'll tell the audience too. When you're anything audio book related, your book, I've felt the way that I listen more is when I
Yeah.
speed it up a teeny bit, right? So I do that, starting to do that with a lot of podcasts that I listen to or some things that I'm watching because it forces you to listen, right? It
Mm-hmm.
legitimately forces you to listen. So it's not like background noise and you're just like, oh, la di da di da. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
distracted. Let me go look at my phone while I'm listening. No, no, you actually lock in and you actually listen to what's going on, things like that. So
Yeah,
definitely,
that's true.
definitely would check in it out. Buy a hard copy too. Support the creator,
Good.
right?
I'd
Most
appreciate
important
it.
thing. Of course. No, definitely. Definitely. Right? Well, we're going to get out of here now, guys. And I do appreciate you listening. Christy Cashman, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I
And
had
I'm sure
fun.
that
Thanks for having me.
we'll see you down the road. You never know. We'll probably be in the same space soon. You just never know how the world is.
I hope so.